Check out this sweet full span flap mod on the FMS Beaver. Consider hopping in our Discord server and chat with us about it. The link is in the description.
What's going on, YouTube? FMS sent me the floats for the Beaver. In addition to that, they had already sent me the Beaver to review, so we're going to be doing a float review today. On top of that, we're going to actually get back into setup videos, and I'm going to show you how I made this plane work with crow and full span flaps, just like the full scale Beaver. So we're going to go ahead and kind of get right to the point, but before we do that, let's show you the center of gravity. We are currently flying on a lithium high voltage SMC 4400 pack. We're bouncing slightly nose down midway through the center of the wing where these two fingers are. It's about the optimal center of gravity where it's just about on the verge of being, well, it's almost pure neutral right here, so it's pretty good. So let's go ahead and get the plane put into the lake. Unfortunately, the sun's a little bright right now, so we'll try to get the plane in a place where it's not being affected, or the camera's not going to have a hard time focusing. There we go. Big, heavy Beaver. Get her out of the way and get on up. All right. Put her into half flaps, but before we do that, let's show the full span flaps, the crow function. See how that works? Pretty cool stuff. And I'm using the original FMS quick connects for this too, so I didn't actually have to take those out. I did have to rewire them, and I'll show you guys how to do that. And again, we're flying on an SMC 4400 pack, high voltage, one of the brand new packs that Danny sent us. These things are amazing. Perfect center of gravity with this plane. Does not try to fight you at all. It does everything you want it to do. Trying to keep the plane out of the sun for my wife. She's helping film today so that the camera doesn't fight. Let's put it into a knife edge pass. At this CG, you got to keep the throttle up a little bit more because it's kind of prone to dropping out of the sky if you're not too careful. There we go. Look at it go. Nice and gentle. A little bit of rudder input and some throttle goes a very long way with this bird. Level the wings out, go vertical, here we go. Snap flap it over. Honestly, as far as the Beaver goes, I know it's not the most popular plane to fly on YouTube, but the Quick Connect system is something that FMS uses in a lot of planes. And if we can get some info out there for this, show you guys how to modify the Quick Connects, you can get more out of your model than you would be able to otherwise by modifying the connector inside of the wing so that you can run servo leads from that connector to the receiver, which is what I've done here. Look at how graceful that looks on the water. Looks amazing. Let's go ahead and put it into a hover, show you guys how much easier it is to fly like that now. Piecing out of that one. The wind kind of picked up just a little bit and it was enough to screw with it. So we'll try it again in a little bit. Let's do some slow flap passes here. There we go. The plane can fly very slow, as long as it's not flying with the wind, of course. So if we turn it around and fly it into the wind, we should get a much slower approach right in front of me. And now the sun's going away, which is great. Look at this thing go. Into the wind, it's like almost walking speed. Throttle up. It's got such a great presence to it. It's so big, very responsive. We did replace the rudder in the elevator servos with metal geared units to kind of, from FMS, to get it to be a little bit more performant. But you don't really have to do that if you don't want to. I just chose to. I like to use metal geared servos when possible, especially if you're gonna fly this plane on grass. It's more likely that you'll break the servo on the rudder if it's using a plastic one. Very simple to replace, very easy to land too. Let's put it into another hover over here. It almost holds itself. I gotta use a little bit of back elevator pressure, but it doesn't want to bite me non-stop when I'm flying it like this. Look at it go. You can see it getting blown around by the wind. I'm not joshing you guys about that. There is some wind out here. But I like to say if I can do this, anybody else can do it too.
it wasn't that long ago when I couldn't do this. So, you know, constant learning is what it's all about being a pilot if you're trying to push your skills. And the Beaver's a pretty good plane for that. Like, you'll learn a lot about stick and rudder because you have to fly it, because it's got a lot of adverse yaw. So if you're trying to fly this plane without understanding how the rudder works on it, then you're going to have issues because it's always going to point nose out on you. And you don't always want that with this kind of plane, because it's like, it's going to get easier to stall for one, because you're going to be uncoordinated. Like, watch this. See how the nose points out on the turns? But if you turn right and use rudder, it looks like a regular turning plane. It doesn't have that adverse yaw problem that it does when you see it without the coordinated turn consistent with the rudder. So it's difficult to speak and fly. So if I don't make any sense, feel free to call me out in the comments, but I'm sure some of this at least comes through. Let's put it into another knife edge pass, show you guys how simple this can be to fly in kind of a death slide attitude. Pull some back elevator on this, hold it back, look at it go. Look at how it's going in the sky. So awesome. It actually stalled at the end there, so I had to throttle out of that. Let's go ahead and go over, do another snap flap loop. Snap flaps being elevator to flap mix. You drop that and it actually will flip over itself in short order. Look at it go. So I'll show you guys what a full span flaps takeoff looks like. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and enable the deflected aileron / full span flaps. You'll be able to see them deploy just a little bit. And I'll show you what it looks like. There we go. A little bit of wind caught it on the takeoff. It's just mostly a, you know, you don't have to do it, but if you want that full scale functionality that the Beaver's got, it's not a bad idea to put it in there. Pretty awesome though. I mean, this thing looks fantastic in the sky. It's got so much potential. And if you like to fly it inverted too, you can do that. It's actually arguably much easier to do that when it's not as nose heavy as it was before. It was so nose heavy that like you had to use a significant amount of stick pressure to keep it up. I'm almost hands off right now. Like if I turn the, whoop, got a little sketchy there. Let me turn it back around. I'll turn the stabilizer completely off for the pitch. Hands off right about now. It's got a slight roll and it is slightly touchy. I'm barely pushing the stick and it's kind of pushing around. So we're gonna put the stabilizer back up just a little bit to help with that. Because the further back you go in the center of gravity, the more touchy the rudder and pitch authority becomes. So we're not gonna get too low to the water. But you can see the plane handles it great. 6 minutes of flight so far. Still plenty of power left. This is a plane for, like, I would call this a pilot's plane. This is a plane that you really have to know how to fly with. One float touchdown. But it will grow with you with your skills. You can make it do all sorts of cool stuff. Put it into another quick hover. Isn't that crazy? The wind's kind of affecting it, so I don't want to go into crazy torque rolls when it's kind of, you know, kind of sketchy like that. But honestly, like, the way this thing flies, it's so great. It's planted feeling in the sky. We're actually getting quite an audience behind me. The more I fly at this lake, the more people like to come and hang out and watch. Thankfully, they're not preventing me from flying right now by talking to us. Give them a little bit of a show. There we go. Now it does kind of bite when it comes out of a stall or a, well, yeah, it is kind of a stall, isn't it? It does bite when it comes out of a hover like that, so you do have to be on the rudder a little bit to correct for the wing drop that it's going to have. Hopefully my wife can keep up. How you doing, dear?
I'm trying.
You're trying. Yeah, sometimes we bring Liz on the channel just in case we need somebody, in case like Will or Kieran can't be available for the day. Go put it into a quick hammerhead, then we'll bring it down and do some B-roll stuff with it, talk more about the flight characteristics, and show you guys what else this thing is capable of on top of the setup that we need to demonstrate too.
32.65 volts.
All right, so I think we can go ahead and land it. We've gotten close to 7 to 8 minutes of flight out of it.
Full flaps.
I think it's not too bad considering, you know, the plane being big and heavy. Let's drop it in, nice and gentle if we can, into the wind. There we go. There's your beaver for you guys.
Let's dive into setup and flight characteristics. One of the major and simple mods you'll want to consider performing is using a sharp single edge blade to cut out the foam around the seats in the cockpit. Doing this will allow you to shove a battery to the foam bulkhead. This has a major effect on hovering stability, as using an appropriate sized battery, 4400 high voltage or 3600, will balance neutral and allow the model to hover close to hands-free. You can see it hovering nose-heavy right now. If you watch the elevator, you'll see that it requires a lot of input to stay in the hover. It's also hard to plop down and wants to start flying instead of dropping on the floats. Now watch it hovering on a 4400 pack balanced neutral. It requires much less input to hover and tends to flop down instead of attempting to fly forward. This battery tray mod has seriously positive effects on the aircraft, making it easy to hold a high alpha knife edge. With a little bit of wind, it almost stays put in the sky.
Some elevator. Wow. Okay. That's crazy. Look at it go.
This mod made me confident enough to start performing high alpha knife edge to landing. This is something that I've never done before with any airframe, but I felt confident that the beaver wouldn't bite me. And bite it did not. It simply dropped in gracefully and did what I told it to. The battery tray mod is our #1 recommended mod for this plane, absolutely 100%. When a plane flies neutral like this beaver is right now, it does what you tell it to do and it doesn't fight you. Getting a model to balance neutrally is one of our most sought after mods to any airframe. Nothing makes me happier with model aviation than a model that does everything that I want it to do. Next up, we'll be splitting the ailerons so you can run a crow or full span flap configuration. To fully mod this airframe, you'll need to remove the FMS circuit board first. This will reduce overall weight slightly, which is always a good thing. You'll unscrew the 4 screws holding the wooden tongue to the wooden battery tray, then gently work the wooden tongue out until you can see the FMS circuit board. It might take a little bit of work, but it will eventually come out. Unplug all cables from the board and run the elevator and rudder servos to the receiver directly and the rear light to the bind port. Then you'll unscrew the quick connectors from the fuselage and remove the existing servo leads from them. Next up, you'll need 2 male-to-male servo leads. One lead will need to have its positive and negative wires swapped, which will connect on top here. The unmodified lead will connect on the bottom. You can see which one goes where by the positive and negative signs on the circuit board. A hobby knife has a sharp enough tip to undo the plastic clip holding the negative and positive wires in place. Simply swap them and make sure that they clip back. This is what both wires should look like when you're finished. Plug the swapped positive lead into the top port and the standard lead below it. This is what it should look like when you're finished. Route the 2 leads through the fuselage and connect them to the receiver. You'll want to ensure that you split the ailerons to the receiver individually, as there will not be enough current to run them on a Y connector together. One final bit of work. Unscrew the circuit board from both wings and move the outermost aileron servo in one position on the board, then screw it back in place. When you connect the wings to the fuselage, the ailerons will now be able to connect as flaperons. If you don't do this, the ailerons won't get power or signal, and you can see the flaperon and crow effect here. We prefer having the ability to split control surfaces like this, and once you've tried it, it's kind of hard to go back to doing it any other way. The nice thing too is that you can run this even on a Spectrum NX6 without giving up safe due to the additional 7th channel.
Mixing is super simple. Just make sure that you're using a 2 aileron 1 flap configuration, then mix flap to left aileron. The rates that we're using here work for us, but you can customize them to your preferences. For elevator compensation, you'll want to play around with these values. They worked for us after some trial and error, but any flap elevator compensation will depend on your chosen center of gravity. These are good starting points. Thanks for watching. If this helped you out, consider telling a friend, and perhaps consider smashing that like and subscribe button. See you next time with a new upload.